So from the meditation, you've probably figured out my theme for the day. I want to talk about our listening. And I want to just acknowledge you right up front that I know that it's not that easy to sit there quietly and listen to what I have to say for as long as I'm going to stand here. And one thing that you probably don't think about, though, is that as I'm standing here sharing with everyone, I can see you. And when you close your eyes, I really know that you're not resting them. I know that you're not meditating because we already did that. You're asleep. And I've often said that it's okay for you to go to sleep when I'm speaking because that gives me direct access to your subjective mind, which is true, and I can plant seeds there, but there's something nice about having you really present for what I'm saying. Now, I know I'm not the only one who has people take a nap during a talk. In fact, it's part of this whole idea of ministry is that there are some people that just don't have the attention span to stick with it. I have a colleague who was sharing with me that one Sunday morning before this COVID thing happened, he was giving his message, and there were two young women who were sitting toward the back of the room, and they were bantering back and forth, and it was distracting, and it was distracting a lot of people around them. And he saw that was going on, and he said to everyone, "There are two people in the room that are truly not paying attention, and I would really appreciate it if you would give me your attention." And it all settled down, and he completed his talk, and they completed the service, and they did their receiving line, which someday we'll have again, I don't know when. But he was in the receiving line, and during the receiving line, 3 different other people apologized for falling asleep during his talk. So it happens, it happens, and that's just part of the game, but the point that I'm bringing this up, and the reason I'm telling you this, is because it's important for us on a spiritual journey to be good listeners. We are already good at hearing. We became masters of hearing when we were children. Our ears work and they pick up sounds. But listening is not the same thing at all. It's quite a different thing. It uses the same mechanics, but it's a much deeper experience. To master anything, the experts say it takes 10,000 hours. You want to become a master of some field of study or some discipline, it takes you 10,000 hours. It takes the same for listening. The challenge is that we're not listening most of the time. Most of the time we can hear, and we receive the vibrations that cause our ears to receive and send messages to our brain. But that doesn't mean that we're listening. It means that we hear sounds. So this mastering is something that I want to challenge you to do in your life, is to move beyond the hearing into the state of listening that will truly make a difference. The Center for Biotechnology Information reported from their own research in 2000 that human beings had an attention span of 12 seconds. 12 seconds. They did a similar study 13 years later in 2013, and it had dropped to 8 seconds. An 8-second attention span is 1 second less than the attention span of a goldfish. Yep. Why is that happening? And it is happening. It's happening mostly because of how we structure our lives now, how we look at life and how we engage in life. And what's happening is that we've learned from our work with being online and having smartphones and all the ways we communicate to have this very, very broad ability to receive information very quickly. And to organize it and put it wherever it belongs in our subjective mind very quickly. The problem is that It's very shallow, this information. It's shallow in a sense that we actually, on average, look at our phone 30 times an hour. And we check our emails. No, is that right? Did I say that right? Let me make sure I got that right. No, I got that wrong. We check our emails. 30 workers have been studied, and generally workers check their emails 30 times an hour. And people in general check their phones, let me make sure I get it right, 150 times a day. For what? Is there something really, really important going on? Or I just want to see if somebody wanted me? You know? And it's not just us. It's certainly become part of the culture. So it's not indicting an individual. It's generally how we are. One clear example of it is that children are learning to think that way. So much so that a little 12-year-old boy named Billy was kind of distracted in his math class, and the math teacher recognized that and called on him and said, "Billy, what do 2, 4, 14, and 28 have in common?" He said, without thinking, he said, CBS, NBC, HBO, and the Cartoon Network. Accessed the information immediately about that. Relatively useless information. So the question becomes, how do we move beyond this very shallow and very broad ability to process information to a place that's different, to a place where we can learn how truly to listen? Listening is engagement without action. When we're listening, there's nothing to do but listen. And there's several ways in our lives that we can practice a much deeper, a much profound way of listening. In our interactions with one another, we went through that in our meditation. We went through this idea that we could deepen our part of a conversation by being a better listener. And how do we do that? Well, one thing we do is we make sure that our phone is off. I've heard one a couple of times in here already. Here's an indication you're not listening. If you're thinking about what you're going to say to this person when they stop talking, you're not listening to them. You're off on your own thing. And what you're doing is you're presuming that you know what they're going to say. But that may or may not be the case. This thing of engaging with another human being is really a sacred moment for us. We take it because we spend so much time hearing people that we get caught up in this hearing, and we don't go into this idea of deep listening, compassionate listening, open heart listening. We're just having that surface, superficial conversation and exchange of some kind of information, and that's all right sometimes. I'm not saying that we're wrong every time we do that. We can't get into a profound conversation with a person at the register at Ingles at the grocery store. That's not going to work. But perhaps in our lives, there's just a small handful of people that we could hold ourselves to a level of connection and communication that's deeper and more intimate than we're accustomed to. My experience is that people that are excellent listeners are revered. It's like, if you're a good listener, when someone's speaking to you, and one of these people that you're really close to, you're totally captivated, as though they're the only person in the world. That the only thing you have to do is listen to them and hear what they want you to know. And what can come out of that in that exchange is that they can actually find a deeper way to communicate with you. And there's even the possibility they may actually listen to you. Wouldn't that be amazing? To have people actually listening to one another. That's a powerful notion. When we listen with interest, there's always something in it for us. It's not like we're giving them a gift because we're listening to them. There is very likely going to be something going on in that exchange that has deep and valuable meaning to you and to me when we do it. It's a powerful notion. And it's something we have to practice. It doesn't come naturally. It doesn't come easy. We have to do it by setting that intention when we know we're going to have this conversation with someone, to be absolutely present to receive the gift of this person. And in doing that, what we're doing is giving them the gift of us, because we'll really see who they are and what they want. One of the biggest distractions in life is that I have to go. I have something where I have to be. I know that you want to talk to me, but I'm all about this next thing that's happening in my life. And it reminds me again of another minister who was involved in a Saturday experience where he was doing a couple of weddings. He did the first wedding, everything went great. He went back to his office, and he's sitting there getting ready. He's got about 10 minutes till he's supposed to meet this next couple and begin this next ceremony, and there's a knock on his door. And he says, "Come in," and who comes in is one of those people in the community who doesn't seem to have their act together, who, has had problems all their life. And are all, the place that this minister would see this person out in the community, they were usually raging on somebody or creating some kind of drama. And so he thought, oh my God, I've got like 8 minutes now. What are we going to do? And so this person sat down right in his office and started talking about the challenges of her life. She said, "I've been a heroin addict for 30 years. My life's a mess. And I feel so worthless." And at that moment, he suddenly realized that this woman was not a distraction. She was an angel that had come to awaken him to his purpose. You never know. Sometimes it's the hard conversations, the ones you really don't want, that are worth leaning into. But whatever's going on, the more you can give your undivided attention and your heart to, the more likely is you're going to get something wonderful out of it. And that's the work. So we listen. We listen. How do we listen? Well, listening always involves sound. That's how we get the information when we're listening, is through auditory connection. So when we're doing that, how are we listening? So I want to give you a little exercise. I know you've already had your eyes closed for a good bit today, but I want to do it one more little thing with your eyes closed. And I want you to listen to the sound of this heart pull. There's nothing to do but listen. And I want you to follow the sound. See where it goes. See where you feel it in your body. See what you learn about yourself from this sound. Listening is different than hearing. We give ourselves to listening. And there's also listening that has nothing to do with your ears. My Native American teacher, Rocking Bear, taught me something that all shamans know. That there's connections with life that require listening that have nothing to do with hearing a sound. I would tell him, this happened on several occasions, where I would tell him about something that happened when I was in a natural setting. It could even have been around here. But where perhaps, I remember once, a crow kind of flew over me onto a branch in front of me, turned around and looked at me. And I told Rockenbear that one day. And he said, "What was the message from the crow?" Huh? Because the crow didn't start saying, "Hey, John, I got something for you here." What was the message? So what he was telling me, what I learned over time, was that what he was saying to me is that we interact with life all the time. And when we pay attention, we really do get information. And it's our job to get that information because it's for us. And that every interaction has value. So what did the crow come to tell you? And when I would stop and focus on that idea of receiving, I would get something. And it would relate to something going on in my life. I've seen this in movies where someone dies and then they come back as an animal and then they come to the person and force that person to get it, what's going on. I don't know that that's that far from reality. I think perhaps that we do interact with beings that don't speak a language that we understand, but at the same time have the ability to show us something. And if we're open to it, we'll get it. And if we're not, we won't. Because I can remember being with other people and having them tell me similar stories, and I would say to them, "What was the message from that one?" And they'd do the same thing I did. Huh? But when we thought about it and sat with it for a bit, we realized that there's more to know than just interacting with human beings. And when we take the time to do that, there's such great value in it for our lives. You have to be open to that kind of listening. It's very different. And then there is one other kind of listening that I think is equally, if not more important than any other. And that's listening to that still small voice within you. And you know, I know some people know that what I mean by within you. I'm not talking about your body. I'm talking about in your psyche, in your presence. There's something there that always knows. There's something there that is supremely aware of this journey that you're on. It's the one that's feeding you information. And are you listening for it? Are you willing to accept it? So many stories I've heard over the years, and I've had them myself. This idea that I was faced with this situation, and the voice said, "Do this." But I was afraid. I was concerned that wasn't going to work out, so I did this other thing and fell on my face and realized that that was the information that I needed, and I already had it, but I didn't act on it. I did something else. And what I ended up with was having to go through it all again in another way at another time. Hopefully that time I got it, but maybe not. Maybe I'm going to have to do it again. Maybe I'll have to do it for lifetimes. I don't know. Or perhaps if I would just listen to that still small voice, that something wonderful would be revealed. Something that I, at the highest levels of my consciousness, already know. My ego may not like it, but there's something there to know. And just because we're afraid, just because we're not completely convinced, is not a good enough reason not to listen. That there's good in us that wants to be revealed. There are things in us that need to be revealed. We do not need. Oh, maybe I should turn it on. There we go. We do not need to let things go in and out. We don't need that. We need to be present with our lives. We need to be present with the people that we love. And it serves us so much to listen. It's an amazing difference. And I encourage you to try that. So as I often do, I found some quotes, some things that I think speak to this brilliantly that I want to share with you. The first one comes from a man named Mark Nepo. Some of my practitioners will remember that name. He wrote a book called 7,000 Ways to Listen. And in that book, he writes, to listen is to lean in softly with a willingness to be changed by what we hear. That's worth reading again. To listen is to lean in softly with a willingness to be changed by what we hear. That's powerful. That's useful in all of our lives. The next one I've got for you comes from Bernard Barsh, who was an advisor to Franklin Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson and a quite successful financier during that time. And he writes, most of the successful people I've known are the ones who do more listening than talking. And we forget that sometimes. We get excited. We want to do all the talking. But when we're listening, we're learning. We're not learning a doggone thing when we're talking. And the last one comes from someone that I discovered when I was working on my PhD. This is Robert Greenleaf. He was the founder of Servant Leadership, a very powerful movement in the leadership movement. And he said only a true natural servant, which is the thing he held highest, was being a servant in life, automatically responds to any problem by listening first. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that powerful? That if we want to get where we want to go, if we want to be successful, if we want to create a life that has depth and power and meaning, we have to listen. And we will learn and we will grow. And I tell you this today, and I think every one of us can learn from these ideas. But I also believe that we as a species, if we get to a place where we learn how to really listen to one another, all of the ills of being human on planet Earth will go away. And then we'll find that sacred place that we seek, where life really does work. Use this, use it well. Know that I love you, and so it is. Thank you.